Alright guys, before we move on, if you want to practice these questions using artificial intelligence and see what mistakes you're making, what score you are likely to get in the test, I have got a great news for you. You can practice all these questions with AI on our app, LAPT Exam Practice app, which is available on iOS and Android as well. Plus, if you want to take a full scored mock test, one free full scored mock test is available in the app, or you can register on languageacademy.com.au. The scorecard you will get with the mock test will be as similar as what you will get in the actual test, and which will make it very clear what score you are likely to get. I'll highly recommend each and every one of you to take that mock test, see what mistakes you're making, how to improve, and what other things you need to work on. Lastly, we have got our branches in Australia and in India, and we do provide online classes. If you need any help, do contact us on the numbers below. Now you can continue with the video.
Domestication is an evolutionary rather than political development. It is certainly not a regime humans imposed on animals some 10,000 years ago. Rather, domestication happened when a small handful of especially opportunistic species discovered through Darwinian trial and error that they were more likely to survive and prosper in an alliance with humans than on their own. Yellow is the most optimistic color, yet surprisingly, people lose their tempers most often in yellow rooms, and babies cry more in them. The reason may be that yellow is the hardest color on the eye. On the other hand, it speeds metabolism and enhances concentration. Think of yellow legal pads and post-it notes. Botanic gardens are scientific and cultural institutions established to collect, study, exchange, and display plants for research and for the education and enjoyment of the public. There are major botanic gardens in each capital city. Zoological parks and aquariums are primarily engaged in the breeding, preservation, study, and display of native and exotic fauna in captivity. A young man from a small provincial town, a man without independent wealth, without powerful family connection, and without a university education, moved to London in the late 1580s, and in a remarkably short time became the greatest playwright not of his age alone, but of all time. How did Shakespeare become Shakespeare? Modern buildings have to achieve certain performance requirements, at least to satisfy those of building codes, to provide a safe, healthy, and comfortable environment. However, these conditioned environments demand resources in energy and materials, which are both limited in supply, to build and operate.
Lincoln's apparently radical change of mind about his war power to emancipate slaves was caused by the escalating scope of war, which convinced him that any measure to weaken the Confederacy and strengthen the Union war effort was justifiable as a military necessity. The grid-based infrastructure enables large-scale scientific applications to be run on distributed resources. However, in practice, grid resources are not very easy to use for the end users who have to learn how to generate security credentials. There is an imminent need to provide transparent access to these resources so that the end users are shielded from the complicated details. The physical location of a restaurant in the competitive landscape of the city has long been known as a major factor in its likely success or failure. Once restaurants are established in such environments, they can do little about their location. All they can do is work to improve customer access to their premises. Restaurateurs often do this by engaging in battles with local authorities about car parking. DeLange and McLean's model has been criticized by some authors. Indeed, this model is specific to contexts of voluntary use of information technology. The usage variable remains a success variable of information systems if the user himself decides to adopt or reject the technology. However, for mandatory uses, such as for ERP systems, the use of the technology is obvious. The success of information systems cannot therefore be measured by usage. Clemenson wanted to see if claims of question dodging actually held up, historically, not necessarily in the unique case of Trump. So Clemenson analyzed the transcripts of 14 presidential debates from 1996 to 2012. Overall, he found 51 accusations of question dodging, 26 by Dems, 25 by Republicans.
The elephant is the largest living land mammal. During evolution, its skeleton has greatly altered from the usual mammal design for two main reasons. One is to cope with the great weight of huge grinding cheek teeth and elongated tusk, making the skull particularly massive. The other is to support the enormous bulk of such a huge body. Business school admissions officers said the new drive to attract younger students was, in part, the result of a realization that they had inadvertently limited their applicant pool by requiring several years' work experience. Talented students who might otherwise have gone to business school instead opted for a law or policy degree because they were intimidated by the expectation of work experience. Shrimp farmers used to hold animals in nursery ponds for 30 to 60 days. Now they try to move them into grow-out ponds in less than 30 days. This reduces stress on the animals and dramatically increases survivals in the grow-out ponds. Many farms that abandoned nursery ponds have gone back to them, and the results have been surprisingly positive. They are using the old, uncovered, earthen nursery ponds. When countries assess their annual carbon dioxide emissions, they count up their cars and power stations, but bushfires are not included, presumably because they are deemed to be events beyond human control. In Australia, Victoria alone sees several 100,000 hectares burn each year. In both 2004 and the present summer, the figure has been over 1 million hectares. Teenage girls are continuing to outperform boys in English, while the gender gap in achievements in math and science has almost disappeared. The figures show that last year, 80% of 14-year-old girls reached at least the expected level 5 in English, compared with 65% of boys. But in math, the girls are just 1% ahead of boys, while in science, the difference is 2%.
It seems that language appeared from nowhere, since no other species has anything resembling human language. However, other animals do possess basic systems for perceiving and producing sounds that enable them to communicate. These systems may have been in place before the appearance of language. Imagine living all your life as the only family on your street. Then, one morning, you open the front door and discover houses all around you. You see neighbors tending their gardens and children walking to school. Where did all the people come from? What if the answer turned out to be that they had always been there? You just hadn't seen them. A unique characteristic of online shopping environments is that they allow vendors to create retail interfaces with highly interactive features. One desirable form of interactivity from a consumer perspective is the implementation of sophisticated tools to assist shoppers in their purchase decisions by customizing the electronic shopping environment to their individual preferences. Traditional divisions of domestic work are understood to persist because of the strong association of the home with femininity and of masculinity with the public sphere. To challenge the home is arguably to challenge what it means to be a woman or a man. Long isolated from Western Europe, Russia grew up without participating in shared developments like the Reformation. Russians took pride in their unique culture and found dubious value in foreign ideals. As a result, Russia is the most unusual member of the European family, if indeed it can be considered one at all. This question is still hotly debated, particularly amongst Russians.
A university is a lot more than just classes and exams. The university is a concept that offers you a host of possibilities to develop both academically and personally. Find out about the different projects, clubs, and societies that are in your university. You will definitely find something you are interested in. Food is one of the most important things you will ever buy, and yet most people never bother to think about their food and where it comes from. People spend a lot more time worrying about what kind of blue jeans to wear, what kind of video games to play, and what kind of computers to buy. Globalization has affected what we eat in ways we are only beginning to understand. Modern food production no longer related to our biological needs, but is in direct conflict with them. The relationship between diet and our fertility, our cancer, heart diseases, and mental illness is becoming clear. Yet, much of our food is nutritionally bankrupt. Australia has one of the world's most important mining industries. It is a major exporter of coal, iron ore, gold, and copper, and is self-sufficient in all minerals except petroleum. Since the first discovery of coal in 1798, mineral production has increased steadily. In the decade leading up to 1992, it doubled.
The preparation of abstracts is an intellectual effort, requiring a general familiarity with the subject. To bring out the salient points of an author's argument calls for skills and experience. Consequently, a considerable amount of qualified manpower that could be used to advantage in other ways must be diverted to the task of facilitating access to information.
Global water consumption has increased almost fourfold in the past 100 years, and many regions can only meet their water demand thanks to essential contributions from mountain regions. In 30 years, almost a quarter of the world's lowland population will strongly depend on runoff from the mountains. Only sustainable development can ensure the important function of mountain areas as Earth's water towers. The Royal Institution is an organization that has been around for 209 years. Many of the people who have worked there have been scientists themselves, including Michael Faraday. He made discoveries that helped make generating and using electricity much easier, making it possible for us to switch on lights, cook dinner, and play game consoles more easily. Quite obviously, a significant rise in the number of people in a given area or country will affect the demand for a whole host of goods and services. Note that a change in the structure of the population will increase the demand for some goods but reduce the demand for others. tissues are grouped together in the body to form organs. These include the brain, heart, lungs, kidneys, and liver. Each body organ has a specific shape and is made up of different types of tissue that work together. For example, the heart consists mainly of a specialized type of muscle tissue, which contracts rhythmically to provide the heart's pumping action. The life of a hunter-gatherer is indeed, as Thomas Hobbes said of the state of nature, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. In some respects, to be sure, wandering through the jungle bagging monkeys may be preferable to the hard slog of subsistence agriculture.
History is selective. What history books tell us about the past is not everything that happened, but what historians have selected. They cannot put in everything. Choices have to be made. Choices must similarly be made about which aspects of the past should be formally taught to the next generation in the shape of school history lessons. The world's fifth largest continent, Antarctica is almost entirely covered by ice, 2,000 meters thick. The area sustains varied wildlife, including seals, whales, and penguins. The Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959 and enforced since 1961, provides for international governance of Antarctica. Summerhill School was regarded with considerable suspicion by the educational establishment. Lessons were optional for pupils at the school, and the government of the school was carried out by a school council, of which all the pupils and staff were members, with everyone having equal voting rights. Regular exercise releases brain chemicals key for memory, concentration, and mental sharpness at the same time as lifting your mood and lowering stress and anxiety, all of which contribute to brain health. Studies show that regular exercise helps you manage complex tasks, organize and razor sharpen your focus, which is great for those long revision sessions or particularly complex exam questions. Since our graduate admission school is not centralized, each of the university's 6 schools and colleges admit students to its own programs. For information about specific program degrees, graduate applications, graduate admission requirements and procedures, graduate scholarships, and the status of your application, visit the individual school websites.
There were various explanations for volcano behavior before the structure of the Earth mantle as a semi-solid material was developed. For decades, awareness that compression and radioactive materials may be heat sources was discounted, and volcanic action was often attributed to chemical reactions and a thin layer of molten rock near the surface. Efficiency is not your friend when it comes to cognitive growth. In order to keep our brains making new connections and keep them active, you need to keep moving on to another challenging activity as soon as you reach the point of mastery in the one you were engaging in. At a time when stress levels are soaring, rates of depression are increasing, and the gap between rich and poor is ever widening, we believe that giving can play a positive role in helping people to feel connected to those around them and generate a sense of purpose and hope. When we give, we feel valued, useful, and happy. The natural environment can be hazardous, and with increased travel and leisure, people today are more likely than ever to be exposed to potentially life-threatening conditions. Although the human body can adjust to some extent, it cannot cope with poisons or prolonged exposure to extremes of environment. Most babies start developing their hearing while still in the womb, prompting some hopeful parents to play classical music to their pregnant bellies. Some research even suggests that infants are listening to adult speech as early as 10 weeks before birth, gathering the basic building blocks of their family's native tongue.
Within this free course, you will be introduced briefly to the discipline of child psychology and to theories and approaches that have been developed to help us understand and support children's lives. By focusing on the individual children, psychologists can assess changes in their child's abilities over time, including their physical, cognitive, social, and emotional development. The course considers the ways in which thinkers have responded to the particular political problems of their day, and the ways in which they contribute to a broader conversation about human goods and needs, justice, democracy, and the proper relationship of the individual to the state. Statistics are indicators of change and allow meaningful comparisons to be made. While it may be the issues rather than the statistics as such that grab people's attention, it should be recognized that it is the statistics that inform the issues. Statistical literacy, then, is the ability to accurately understand, interpret, and evaluate the data that inform these issues. The numbers on U.S. student debt, after all, are truly staggering. The average 2015 U.S. university graduate who took out loans to help pay for tuition enters the workforce with $35,000 in student debt. In the U.S., total student debt exceeds $1.15 trillion, dwarfing, for instance, the nation's credit card debt. The World Health Organization said an experimental malaria vaccine will be tested on more than 750,000 children in Ghana, Kenya, and Malawi next year. The disease causes more than 400,000 deaths annually. How the vaccine is implemented will be key to its success. It must be administered 4 times, with the final dose 18 months after the third.
A simple and inexpensive zebrafish model of concussion reveals the genetic pathways underlying the animal's remarkable ability to regenerate injured brain tissue. Understanding the mechanisms of regeneration in the zebrafish brain could ultimately help identify new ways to promote recovery from head injury in humans. Hundreds of millions of American people eat fast food every day without giving it too much thought, unaware of the subtle and not so subtle ramifications of their purchases. They just grab their tray off the counter, find a table, take a seat, unwrap the paper, and dig in. The whole experience is transitory and soon forgotten. Training to become an actor is an intensive process, which requires curiosity, courage, and commitment. You'll learn how to prepare for rehearsal, how to rehearse, and how to use independent and proactive processes to achieve your best work possible for stage and screen. Have you ever pictured a world without light? Just think how much we rely on man-made light sources in our lives. Without engineers, we wouldn't be able to live the way we do. No streetlights, no TV, no computer display, no house lights. Engineers design and build all these things. And they also design, build, and run the electricity systems that power all these light sources.
A patriarchal family is one run by the father or eldest male of a household. He usually decides the duties of the women and children in the family. In this role, the patriarch solves family disputes and divides the family's wealth. The patriarch is also the spiritual leader of the family because he is thought to be the closest to the spirits of the family's ancestors.
People have used biomass energy from living things since the earliest cavemen first made wood fires for cooking or keeping warm. Biomass is organic, meaning it is made of material that comes from living organisms, such as plants and animals. The most common biomass materials used for energy are plants, wood, and waste. A simple barometric altimeter includes a sealed metal chamber, a spring, and a pointer that shows altitude in meters or feet. The chamber expands as air pressure decreases and contracts as it increases, bending the spring and moving the pointer. An altimeter can be mounted on an aircraft's instrument panel or worn on a person's wrist. The icehouse structures, of which 4 still remain intact, are located south of Sultan Kala. These large, conically domed earthen structures would have had sheets of ice built up on the ground level over the course of the winter to provide year-round ice supplies. Hydrogen will play several roles in our future. For transport, we now see several manufacturers launching cars powered by electricity produced in a hydrogen fuel cell, and this will happen even more in the near future. Fuel cell buses are also an attractive solution for public transport. Also, engineers are now even starting to consider using fuel cells and hydrogen to power trains. A newly created form of carbon in a mesh just 1 atom thick is tantalizing scientists with hints that it could sharply improve rechargeable batteries and allow wires so small that they can operate at a scale where metals fail. The material is highly conductive and may prove able to store more electrical energy than even graphene, the astonishing atomic thickness carbon honeycomb material identified nearly 20 years ago. Desalination is the answer to long-term water security, but it's also expensive and energy-intensive. The good news is that scientists are developing some viable solutions. The first desalination plant in Europe was built in Spain nearly a half-century ago. Since then, facilities have sprung up in water-stressed regions throughout Europe. The most widely accepted model for planet formation, known as the nebular hypothesis, begins with a swirling disk of gas and dust leftover material from the birth of a nearby star. At some point in time, gravity triumphs over the pressure supporting this cosmic dust, which then starts to rotate, quickly collapsing under its own gravity. There are other components, aside from the wheels and rails, that add to the noise a train makes when it passes. Older trains had their air conditioning units underneath the carriage, but modern trains have been lowered to allow people with less mobility to enter the carriage more easily. As a result, air conditioning units are now on top of the carriage, where they add to the train noise. Online speech has become such an influential way of experiencing politics today, not just participating in democratic processes like elections but also the way we lead our daily democratic life through digital communication. If these sorts of irreverent and vitriolic exchanges are so prominent online, then we need to see how we can bring nuance to understanding them. The use of technologies for the inclusion and empowerment of persons with disabilities is not new, from the creation of Braille and the first hearing aid to the invention of the wheelchair. For disabled persons, new assistive technology can make all the difference, while technology and innovation are breaking down the barriers to achieving full participation.
The robotic system is composed of a floating platform with 8 cables that are connected to a mobile robot that will move around on the seafloor beneath it to collect waste items in a box, using a gripper, hook, or suction device depending on the size of the litter. The orientation of the robot can be controlled by adjusting the tension of the cables. Don't miss the beginning of the lecture since it is very often most valuable part, for instance, because it reviews previous lectures or outlines objects and lecture structure. If you easily get distracted by other students, sit near the front. In order to achieve the free flow of goods and services, with work and capital between the member countries, they needed to establish mutual politics in areas as diverse as agriculture, transport, and when they concerned with a far wider range of issues. Behavioral and social sciences research helps predict, prevent, and manage illness in individuals and in whole populations. This research also helps people change their behaviors, understand treatments, and learn how to stick with them. Society's role is significant, too. Access to healthcare affects decision-making and behavior. Undergraduates may choose to major in any one of 125 academic majors. The university's distinguished faculty includes internationally known scientists, authors, and teachers who are committed to continuing the university's tradition in providing one of the highest quality undergraduate educations available. Scholars build their own personal libraries to support not only particular projects but also general reading in their field. They buy or make photocopies of materials when possible, so they can consult them frequently, mark pages, and write annotation on them. When moving into a new field, they add to their collections, usually concentrating on primary texts. Relish the fall colors while you can. Scientists think that the rich reds, oranges, and yellows of fall may be one of the many casualties of global warming. Leaves change color in part because of cues taken from dropping temperatures. As temperatures remain warmer through fall and winter nights, they could delay the beloved fall color shift. An inclined plane is a simple machine with no moving parts. It is simply an even sloping surface. It makes it easier for us to move objects to higher or lower surfaces than if we lifted the objects directly upwards. It is believed that ancient Egyptians used inclined planes to carry heavy stones to build pyramids. The world's fifth largest continent, Antarctica, is almost entirely covered by ice 2,000 meters thick. The area sustains varied wildlife including seals, whales, and penguins. The Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959 and enforced since 1961, provides for international governance of Antarctica. The root systems of vegetative cover hold soil in place and prevent wind and water erosion. It also ensures its supply of organic matter from dead leaves and the dropping of animal waste. The vegetative cover also shelters the soil from excessive heat from the sun. It helps to reduce evaporation and retain soil moisture needed for the breakdown of organic matter.
The geosphere includes all the stuff that makes up the crust and the core of the Earth, and everything natural and lifeless that makes up the surface of the Earth. Examples are all the rocks and sand particles from dry land to those found at the bottom of the oceans. The geosphere undergoes infinite processes constantly, which in turn modifies other spheres. Travel planning is all about the details. But while you may be a master at uncovering the cleanest hotels and practicing proper airplane etiquette, there's an element of being a guest that stumps even the savviest of travelers. Tipping etiquette: who to tip and how much of a tip to give can be confusing. Many scientists examining human impacts on coastal ecosystems have focused on agricultural runoff, because fertilizers that wash into the sea carry massive amounts of nutrients and pathogens that can harm marine environments. But the impacts of human sewage receive far less attention. Part of the reason may be that, unlike trash or oil spills, sewage can be invisible in the water. Misinformation is everywhere. It can be spread inadvertently if people make a genuine mistake. In today's environment, people get much of their news from social media, which lacks gatekeepers and therefore allows misinformation to spread fast and wide. People are being bombarded with information and it has become difficult for them to separate fact from fiction. The shorter days are a sign to trees to begin to prepare for winter. During winter there is not enough light for photosynthesis to occur, so as the days shorten throughout autumn, the trees begin to close down their food production systems and reduce the amount of chlorophyll in their leaves. Occupational therapy helps people of all ages who have physical, sensory, or cognitive problems. It can help them regain independence in all areas of their lives. Occupational therapists help with barriers that affect a person's emotional, social, and physical needs. They also help kids to improve their school performance and aid their daily activities. It also boosts their self-esteem and sense of accomplishment. The world's poorest countries tend to have the largest family sizes and fertility rates. When people have no economic security and cannot rely on their government, they often have children to ensure they will be looked after when they are older. Where child mortality is high, there is an even greater impetus to have more children. Archaeologists have reconstructed methods of timekeeping that go back to prehistoric times at least as old as the Neolithic. The natural units for timekeeping used by most historical societies are the day and the solar year. Calendars are explicit schemes used for timekeeping. The first historically attested calendars date to the Bronze Age, dependent on the development of writing in the ancient Near East. The magnetic field is a vector field. At each point it has a magnitude and direction. The direction is defined as the direction of the force that a magnetic north pole would feel at that point. Since like poles repel and opposite poles attract, this means that the magnetic field goes away from the north pole of a magnet and towards the south pole. Canada's first-ever poverty reduction strategy is built on the vision that all Canadians should be able to live in dignity. It is also built on the belief that all Canadians deserve to be treated fairly and fully participate in the development of their communities. To be effective, the strategy must have transparent indicators, clear targets, and tangible actions.
I have scored 73 in my PTE in only 10 days.
I achieved my desired score just in 20 days.
My desired score.
Desired PTE score.
Desired score.
Desired score.
Desired score.
Desired score.
मैं डिजायर स्कोर लैंग्वेज एकेडमी तो अचीव किया है।